Greetings, everyone. We are live again. Dynasty Mayor Search for Guru. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, as we always do, we just want to thank you all for the support. It really means a lot. Again, thank you all for the support. Make sure you go to dynastymere.com. And we're going to jump right into it because we have a special guest, Professor Dr. Larry Davis is on with us today, and he is an expert when it comes to we'll say Black American engagement to the world. This guy is, I don't know anyone that can break it down better than Professor Davis. So today we're going to speak on, now we're going to touch Africa, but we're really going to focus on Canada as well, because I know we don't talk about Canada that much when it comes to Black Americans engagement. And then Professor Davis is also going to speak on several projects that he has going on in Canada as we speak. So, Professor Davis, go ahead and introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Well, Dinus, first of all, thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Professor Larry Davis, and I am a professor of educational leadership. And I guess tonight we're going to discuss the shared cultural legacies of the United States and Canada. Dinus called me. He says, "You know what, Professor Davis? Maybe we need to talk about how the United States and Canada actually are similar in so many ways." And one simple example is that up until the 1960s, basically all of the Black Canadians who were there were of African American descent, because there were successive waves of Blacks who had left the United States, really beginning during the American Revolution. Lord Dunmore of Virginia basically put out a proclamation, and he stated that any enslaved person who would fight on the side of Britain, he would grant them their freedom. And so tens of thousands of African Americans from across the U.S. South left the plantation, and they joined the British. And when the British actually lost the war, these Blacks were evacuated, and roughly 3,500 to 4,000 ended up in Canada. And they mainly settled in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. And over the centuries, they actually formed some of the oldest Black communities across Canada. Now, Blacks also settled in the other provinces as well. You have historic Black populations in Quebec and Ontario, in the prairies, and as far west as British Columbia, Yukon, and Nunavut. And Nunavut is it used to be called the Northwest Territory, but now it's called Nunavut. That's probably the newest province. But there's a long-standing relationship between African Americans and African Canadians. And as I stated, we really have a shared history, because many of the early pioneers who really laid the foundation for Black culture, those now African Canadians, were African Americans. And one example would be Viola Desmond, who is on a $10 bill. If you take a critical look at her background, you'll discover that her ancestors came from Virginia. Now, someone that we all probably know, this is a famous movie star, The Rock. His father was from Nova Scotia. And even today,
The wrestler, The Rock.
The former wrestler and the author.
Right.
His father is actually Nova Scotian.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people were unaware of that fact, but Canada actually has a very, very rich Black history, and I think what happens is overshadowed by the fact that, well, look, America is a superpower. We have 340 million people. Canada only has roughly 35 to 40 million people, and so we tend not to even view or look at Canada because it's small in comparison to us. But if you seriously look at the contributions that Blacks have made there, it's quite impressive, very, very impressive. And so, as you stated earlier, and we'll get into that later, that I've been working on a number of projects in Canada. At one point in time, you asked me the role that Blacks have played in hockey. Well, one of the earliest hockey leagues in Canada was formed by the African Nova Scotians in 1894, 1895. Now, keep in mind, this was 22 years before the National Hockey League that was formed in 1917. And so you had these African Nova Scotians, formerly African Americans, who had kind of organized themselves, and created these hockey leagues. And they were not only in Nova Scotia, you also found these hockey leagues in New Brunswick and also Prince Edward Island, and they would meet, every so often to compete with one another, and they were very, very famous across Canada. And I think finally, as of late last year, the government of Canada now recognizes the colored hockey leagues of Canada because of their contribution to the making of hockey.
Now people will say that Black people in Canada invented hockey. So did they invent it or just contribute to it?
Well, they heavily contributed to the formation of hockey without question. I think they were definitely pioneers in terms of how the game is played. An invention, I think the invention was more of coming together of certain elements. I think perhaps you can see the influence of Native Americans, of course, the European settlers, but without doubt, I think that the African Nova Scotians really were in the forefront of actually organizing leagues early on. And as I stated before, in 1917, which is when the National Hockey League came into existence in Canada.
Now, let me ask you, why is it, now when it comes to the contributions of Black Americans who migrated to Canada or who migrated to Africa, why aren't these contributions included in Black American history? You never hear about them.
Right. Yeah. So it really is the way that we teach African American history. What that would be, I would probably say this. It really would probably need to be a whole separate category called African American transnational history, because that's exactly what it is. These African Americans left the U.S. Because of slavery, because of Jim Crow, for any number of reasons, and and they actually adopted a new country. It should be taught, and honestly, I think that most people, I would even argue, Don, is that the vast majority of Americans of any race probably almost know nothing about the fact that there was an outward migration of Black Americans northward into Canada, primarily first to the Maritime provinces, and the Maritimes include Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. But it also Blacks went into Quebec and into Ontario. And we tend not to focus on that because America is a huge country, massive country, and America has hypervisibility. Canada is much smaller. I mean, you're talking about 35 to 40 million people. And so it's kind of overlooked. But I do think that the history should be taught. And let me just say this to Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is unique, first of all, because it has the oldest historic Black communities in all of Canada. Nova Scotia is also unique in the sense that out of Nova Scotia, well, let me just say this first of all, you are now a citizen of Sierra Leone. Without the Nova Scotian migration to the west coast of Africa, there would be no Sierra Leone. Those 1,200 African Canadians, slant African Americans who left in 1792, basically, they went to the west coast of Africa and it created a brand new city from scratch. And also, in addition to that, they created a brand new nationality called the Creoles. And and if you take a serious look at what Sierra Leone became, it really was a center of abolitionist movement, right? There's a wonderful book written by Dr. Lyman Senna. He's from the Gambia, and he writes this book called Abolitionists Abroad, subtitle American Blacks in the Making of Modern West Africa. What Sierra Leone became is a center for the abolitionist movement, for the ending of enslavement or West African enslavement in that part of Africa. And in addition, with the creation of Fourbe University, or rather Fourbe College, that area too of West Africa became known as the Athens of West Africa because of the academic rigor. Folks like Dr. Reverend Edward Jones came, and he was the president of the university for some 20 years. And Africans from all over the West would come to Florida University in Freetown, Sierra Leone, to be educated. And that's a legacy I think that a lot of us should be aware of. And like I said, if it were not for those African Nova Scotians still in African Americans leaving Canada, there would be no Sierra Leone. And I do want to say that the primary reason that they did leave early on in 1794, there was a race riot in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, and whites unfortunately saw blacks as competition, cheap labor, and they basically attacked these new Canadians, or well, these new African Nova Scotians. And basically, this community of Black felt, a third of them out of the 3,500 or so felt that, you know what, we don't feel comfortable here in Canada. And so they negotiated with the British to leave. And again, they left in 1792 and sailed to West Africa, and they founded the city of Freetown, which is now the capital of Sierra Leone.
Right. Guys, hit that like button again. Please hit that like button. Now, Professor Davis, are you familiar with some of the adversity that the Nova Scotians, once they arrived to Sierra Leone, what they faced? Can you go into detail?
Oh, sure. Well, they got there. They were free. However, unfortunately, the British gave them some of the worst lands. And you have to keep in mind that these people had been enslaved. And so, although they were free, culture is very difficult to change. And so whites, unfortunately, did not see them as equals at all. Right. And so, and even though they could participate in in British North America, because it wasn't Canada yet. And keep in mind, Canada did not become a nation until 1867. So it was British North America. That the British still saw these people as somehow subordinate, even though they were trying to participate, right? And in British society, they were marginalized, and they didn't have enough work, and they had the worst lands. And so, as I stated before, some said we need to leave. We need to either go back to America, which a few did, but 1,200 or so decided, well, you know what, let's try relocating to Africa and basically create a tabula rasa, or rather a new beginning. But it was rough. And even beyond that, for those who stayed there was one community called Africville, which was established in the 1840s, 1850s, kind of a self-sufficient Black community that was outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia, that the government, unfortunately, that the provincial government of Nova Scotia really kind of ignored. And so these Blacks, were somewhat marginalized. And so some of the same thing that Blacks had faced in the United States, they were also facing not only in Eastern Canada, but they were also facing these same types of things later on in Western Canada as well. And I think that the difficult thing is that culture is really, really hard to penetrate, and folks still saw these Black Canadians now as less than.
Guys, you can hit that like button, and what we'll do, I know Mr. Davis isn't going to be on with us long, so we'll open up the lines. If you guys like to call in and ask a question, again, if you'd like to call in and ask a question, send me an email at huru@searchforhuru.com. Again, send me an email at huru@searchforhuru.com. Go ahead and call. Send me an email, and I'll see the link, and you're more than welcome to call in. So now, go ahead, please.
Dennis, let me ask you, one of the things that you'll notice in Canada is that regardless if you're in the Maritime provinces or in Quebec, Ontario, the Prairies, or in British Columbia, I would probably say that the single most important institution across the province has been what can be defined as the Black church in Canada. you're going to find historic Black churches across Canada. As a matter of fact, the oldest Black church established by a Black person in Canada was actually created or founded in 1783 by David George. And David George is a renowned figure not only in Canada, also in the United States, and also in Sierra Leone. He founded the Shelburne Baptist Church. Now today, it's no longer a Black church; it's an integrated church. But you find historic Black churches across Nova Scotia. Richard Preston, another enslaved African American who left Virginia, Norfolk, I believe, he migrated there. And over the course of decades, he founded what is defined as the African United Baptist Association, which is a conference of churches which operates like the AME Church. It speaks on behalf of the African Nova Scotian population. And that particular institution has been in existence since 1854. And so again, you can go from Nova Scotia to Quebec, which, for example, in Quebec, the second oldest Black institution there is the Union United Church, founded by African American women and their quarter husbands in 1907. And then if you go to Ontario, one of the oldest historic institution, of course, is the First Baptist Church of Ontario, which was founded in 1826. Same thing in Manitoba, one of the oldest historic churches, Pilgrim Baptist, which is still there today. And in Saskatchewan and Alberta, you have the shallow Baptist churches, which are well over 100 years old. And in British Columbia, you have the Fountain Chapel AME Church, which was actually founded by Jimi Hendrix's grandmother. And so the institutional Black church in Canada really was the centerpiece for maintaining culture across Canada.
Now, shout out to my brother, Francis Mumbo, in the chat room. Sierra Leone existed before Freetown. What's Davis?
Okay. Here's what I would argue. Were there people living in what we call Sierra Leone? Absolutely. Was there another settlement called Granville Town that actually evolved in 1787? Absolutely. But in terms of Freetown, the city, it did not exist. Freetown was actually established by the African Nova Scotians. That's just a fact. That is just a fact. And that can't be argued. I mean, without the coming of those African Nova Scotians to that part of Sierra Leone, there would be no Freetown.
Okay. Guys, again, if you want to call in, let me check the email. You guys could, like I said, I'll send the link out, and you guys could click on the link and call in. But Tracy Davis, tell everybody what you're doing in Canada right now.
Right. So just to share this with you, Donis, a couple of years ago, I partnered with an organization in Western Canada, in British Columbia, called the African Descent Society of British Columbia, and they were in need of developing a curriculum for the province of British Columbia, and so that is one of the things that I do as a profession. And so I had an opportunity to serve as the principal investigator, lead developer of the first ever African descent course in British Columbia, which will roll out in September of 2021. What a lot of people are not aware of is that people of African descent played a significant role in establishing British Columbia. African Americans moved en masse to British Columbia in the 1850s because of the Dred Scott decision. And as you know, Dred Scott basically said that you may have been born in America, you may have been free, but you'll never be a citizen. And so there were thousands of African Americans living in California, but they had no rights. I mean, they were free, but they weren't viewed as citizens. And so they were being mistreated. And so they had to determine, where do you go from here? And long story short, they eventually migrated to British Columbia at the request of James Douglas, who of course was the premier of that time. And so they went and made a profound impact on the province. And so in essence, what I've been doing as an educator is I had a chance to kind of build out the course And now the course has been adopted by the Vancouver Public School System, the Ministry of Education, and now this particular course will be offered to all 60 school districts across British Columbia. In addition, I'm going to be on a panel. I will be on the program in Alberta, Canada. There will be a panel of experts speaking about the Black presence in Alberta, British Columbia, and so I will be participating at Shallow Baptist Church there. And Shallow Baptist Church is the oldest historic Black church in all of Western Canada. And so will be participating in that particular talk and explaining to people and sharing with the viewers and listeners the role that Blacks have played in the making of Alberta, Canada.
Okay, so Michael in the chat room, let's see here. If I got okay, so let me read this first question, statement by Brother Mike Olawale. I thought Freetown was established by the British as a designated place for freed slaves.
No. The people who built Freetown were those African Nova Scotians. Those are the folks who built it. And see, that's why history really is important, and people need to understand their legacy. Without the coming of the Nova Scotians, right? Without these Africans who had negotiated with the British to leave Canada during that time, there would be no Sierra Leone. It wouldn't exist. Those African Americans decided, well, listen, we're not going to live in slavery, not in the United States, not in Canada. We're going back to Africa. We're going to create a tabula rasa, a new beginning. And that's exactly what they did. And again, without the coming of those Nova Scotians, no Freetown, no Sierra Leone.
Okay, so Brother Francis Momo says, if I got the professor well, he was saying that if it wasn't for the Nova Scotians, who are people of African descent, coming to Freetown, there would be no Sierra Leone. Can he clarify that, Dinas?
That is correct. Because up until the 1960s, really, almost all of Sierra Leone really was the Freetown area. That was it.
Okay, guys, if you have any questions, anybody wants to call in and add to the conversation, please call in, and you're more than welcome to add to the conversation. Right. So now, go ahead, Mr. Davis.
I was going to say this, Dennis, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say African Canadian history too is in many ways like African American history, meaning that Black Americans are anchored in the entire history of the United States, and that's the same with Black Canadians. Black Americans have fought in all the wars in America. African Canadians have fought in all the wars in Canada, and again, what's interesting too is that up until the 1960s. Almost all Blacks in Canada really were from the United States. What you've had were successive waves of African Americans leaving the U.S. South due to, slavery, Jim Crow, all different types of things, and they settled across Canada, from the Maritimes through the prairies to British Columbia, and wherever they went, they just made contributions to those provinces. And like I say, most of the old historic institutions that you'll find across Canada were really created by these migratory waves of African Americans coming from Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, what have you, moving northward for freedom and opportunity.
Okay. Mike says Sierra Leone was created from the Berlin Conference. It was under British colonies. Only Liberia was created by slaves.
Well, I actually respectfully disagree. And what I would say is that without question, the formation of Sierra Leone was a result of the Nova Scotians who came in the 1790s. And I think also too, Dr. Lyman Senna, who wrote the book Abolitionists Abroad, would definitely agree with that perspective as well.
Okay. Let's see. Shout out to Black Beauty. Never knew that we went that far up into Canada. Like I said, Professor Davis, we're just taught about America. Like we're not talking about as far as
Right.
the African America.
And let me just say this, Dinus, and I know that this topic is specific to Canada, but as a result of the American Revolution, what occurred were multiple what I would define as African American diasporas. And what I mean by that is, as I said, that the basis of the Black Canadian population prior to 1965 in Canada were folks who were descendants of African Americans. And and like I said, as a result of the war of the American Revolution, the War of 1812, Black Americans went to the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos Islands, Bermuda, Trinidad and Tobago, of course, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and as far away as Australia. And so, in essence, what you have in all of those areas are descendants of African Americans all over the place. Look, most people don't realize, and I'll say this, and like I say, the topic is Canada, that 80% of the population in the Bahamas actually have direct Black American roots. Same thing with Turk and Caicos Islands. The exact same thing.
Oh, we lost Professor Davis. You got to hop back on. We lost you. Guys, hit that like button again. Please hit that like button. Kevin, Lamron, please stop trolling. In fact, please stop spamming. Please, again, stop spamming. Hit that like button. I sent the link out to a couple people, so you guys can click on the link and hop in and join the conversation. Let's see here. Hopefully, Professor Davis hops back on. Hopefully, there we go. Professor Davis is back.
I'm sorry. So I don't know what happened.
No problem. We lost you at you were talking about the Caribbean.
Right. And so, as I was mentioning, like I say, of course, the topic is Canada, but as a result of the American Revolution, there were outward migration of African Americans across the Caribbean. 80% of Bahamians have African American roots. The same thing with Turk and Caicos Islands, right? There were descendants of African Americans who went to Bermuda, Trinidad and Tobago, and beyond. And this, as a result, again, of war and African Americans moving about in search of freedom.
Okay. Brother Francis and Brian, I emailed you guys the link. Click on the link and come and join the conversation. So we'll take those two callers, and then Professor Davis, I know you have to
sure
go. Hold on. In fact, here's Dream City Classified. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I wasn't able to find the exact company, but there's this upcoming Hello? I wanted to ask you, Doctor, thanks for having me on, by the way, about your opinion on the future of sort of like, all right, so there's the crypto space, and there's an opportunity here, I feel, for Black Americans as well as other people in the diaspora and Africa as well, to kind of create a system, an alternative system of grassroots economics. So, and this is to be leveraged through cryptos, maybe some co-ops. But what's your opinion, with all that in mind, what's your opinion of the possible backlash? Oh, he left.
Yeah.
I'll keep going. Maybe you can hear me. But the possible backlash of setting this sort of thing up as an alternative system. And
now, when you say backlash coming from who?
The dominant society, or let's say the European powers, colonialism, that sort of thing.
So, Professor Davis, his question is, if Africa and the diaspora set up some system of, I guess, some monetary system That's what's the word? Help me out. Where it's not decentralized. What do you think the backlash will be, if any?
Wow. We went from Canada to
Well,
a whole different
I mean,
topic.
as a historian, Black people are the essential or the fundamental store of wealth for these institutions. Well, we were the initial store of wealth. That's it. Please
Well,
continue.
no, I mean and again that really was outside of the scope of what I was discussing. My primary topic was basically Black history in Canada, and but your question seems to be about economics, and which is really outside of the scope of what I was discussing.
Yeah. So, Brother Dream City, we appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna get Brother Francis out here from Sierra Leone,
Right.
but we appreciate it, brother.
Right.
Okay. All right, Brother Francis.
Yes,
Hello.
Brother Dinas, and yes, Brother Dinas and Dr. Leone Davis. How are you? And how is everybody doing on that
Hello.
side? Hello.
Can you hear Professor Davis?
Yeah, are you getting
I
me on
can't. I
that
can't
side?
hear him at all. I can't.
Are you getting me, Dinas?
I hear you just fine, Francis. Professor Davis can't hear you for some reason.
I can't hear him at all.
Are you getting me?
This guy Dream City is classified as still here.
No. Okay. Oh, hold on, Francis. Let Professor Davis come back on. He's having connection issues, Professor Davis. Guys, hit that like button again. Please hit that like button, Professor Davis. Here we go. Professor Davis, what's going on with your Wi-Fi over there?
I have no clue.
So
But now I'm here. Francis, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear Francis
yeah, I'm
now?
here. So
Francis, go ahead.
yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Leone Davis. And I've been following the show from Sierra Leone, and I appreciate your thoughts being given on the African American stuff and history, and how because basically most times, so you say it's popular that you refer to the our brothers and sisters on that side as African Americans, but these were Africans that were enslaved and then taken on that side, and then they were given a new identity that we refer to it on that in this day and age. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it is I listened a lot on the African Nova Scotian that came in, because in Nova Scotia is just the location they came from, but we all know that they are people of African descent. So that's also very important to clear who are Nova Scotians and who they were in the first place. So and what I want to get my thoughts in is from your discussions that if it was not for that African group that came in 1792, that would not have been a Sierra Leone. So we need to address that, okay? Because Sierra Leone existed before the Freetown naming, which was in 1792, when you have that 1,100 plus Africans that came in under John Clarkson in 1792. So, so, but let us understand that Sierra Leone existed before Freetown. So I'll back up a little bit to aid our historic education on that also, because when you had the first set of blacks that came into Freetown with the arrangement of the Granville Sharp and others, because it's also important for people to know that it's 1792. It was under a company rule that later became a colony in Sierra Leone. That was when you had the 1792. But backing up in 1787, when you had the first set of Africans coming into Freetown, coming into Sierra Leone. They came into Sierra Leone, and the place that they came into was now that you call Freetown was Romarong, which is a Timini word for the place that they came in. So in 1787, when you had the first set of black people that came in, they were referred to as Black Paul. So they named this place that the Nova Scotians refer to as Freetown as the province of freedom, or Granville Town, in the name of Granville Sharp, which was a lawyer and he was also part of the philanthropists with William Wilberforce and others that made them come into Freetown, into what was the province of freedom that they named at the time. So if you look at that name, the province of freedom, it also gives the basis of even when the 1792 guys came. So people before that time, the English people or whoever had got some transaction with the other Africans that were settled after the American Revolutionary War, or who were black loyalists that came into Nova Scotia, and these were the Africans that came into Freetown in 1792. Most of them might have known the name Province of Freedom, because the first Granville Town, which is now Freetown, was born 2 years after the Black Paul gave the name Province of Freedom, or Granville Town. So the people had to move. All of those blacks that came into what you know today as Freetown moved eastward. They moved eastward. Today, if you come to Freetown, there is a place known as Granville Dump Site, which is now a place that are around Kleintown, where you have the old Frobe College building. So they moved eastward. And so after the burning of that place, and like Dinas was asking you, what were the fundamental issues for the burning of the first Granville Town? We might come to that, and we can give a whole lot of historic education around that also. It's just like a modern day. We know we all are blacks, and we Africans that were enslaved and taken into the plantations had got some conditioning that did not speak to some of our African values over time because of the time they took in the plantation. So you notice that when these repatriated or Africans came back to Freetown, came back to Sierra Leone, and they met their brothers and sisters that they've left over a very long time, there are a lot of attitudes over time that perhaps the Timinis, who were the landlord, did not agree with, and so they had to start fighting. So with the burning of the first province of freedom. So because of you had the scattered Africans at the time that that came for Britain, there were Black Poles in what you know as the Granville Town. So these guys, or the philanthropists also, we are looking around to bring people together, because they've already burnt this place, and a lot of the Africans that were here died in that rebellion. So and they did not have people. The company construction at the time did not have people to administer whatever program they had. You understand, Dianas? So,
yes.
So they had to look out for other groups of people, and that was when you had the 1792 folks, the Nova Scotians coming in, who were Africans, the Black loyalists, or different other groups of people. And so, because they needed people to begin another colonial construction with in Freetown, that later became a colony, because they had already chartered a Sierra Leone company in 1791, leading 1790, 1791. So they needed people, because this company had already been chartered. So that is why, like, you have Henry Taunton. Henry Taunton was one of the proprietor of the Sierra Leone company. Okay. So they need because they did not have anybody to answer. That is why even the other British guy that we are thinking to have a settlement that you call Alexander Falcon Bridge, when he came, he went to the Sierra Leone River where you have Bones Island today, because there were still diplomatic arrangements with the Timinis for them to accept the crew that they will be coming in from Nova Scotia in 1792. So, and because they wanted people to start that settlement that have already been be shattered. So 2 years there was forest in what you call today mid Freetown. There was forest all over because these guys had moved eastward. So when these guys came, that they call Nova Scotians today, they came, and then so you still see the resonation of the Granville town, which was still built on the principles of freedom and free space and independence location. So they still from province of freedom. These Nova Scotians, when they came, Africans at the time in 1792, they had to brush upward, and then they had to brush from where you have the watering place that you call Kinjimi, and say, let's brush so some space, and then you might meet a cotton tree, and then that's the space that they brush, and then that's where you call today Freetown in 1792. So basically, if you go back in history as far as the 1400s, the one of the Portuguese known as Alvaro Fernandez had already watched at this place known as Sierra Leone. So by entering from the place known as Casamance that you call Senegal today, he had already spotted a place that they knew as Sierra Leone. So geographically, they already knew this place as Sierra Leone before even you had the people coming in 1792. So you had
Hey, Francis.
People.
Hey, Francis.
Yeah.
Francis, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Francis, can you hear me? Right.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, who built Freetown?
Who built Freetown? Okay, let me help with that, because Freetown was the place that called Freetown had moved from the province of Freedom, Granville Town, and then you had Freetown in 1792. So when you had Freetown, you had various indigenous groups within the space that you call Freetown today, not just because of the naming, okay? So a lot of these other groups, the Timinis, the Limbas, the Bulums, the Sapes, that these Nova Scotians came in, these were the people that formed together, you understand? They formed together and built what you know today as Freetown. So it's not just about the naming of the Freetown, right? But it is a conglomeration of different groups. Because for instance, after the abolition of the slave trade, like somebody would say, it was the Nova Scotians that came with Creole in Sierra Leone. No. You understand? It was not the Nova Scotians that came with Creole in Sierra Leone, the language Creole, okay? The Creole language was a conglomeration of different indigenous ethnic groups, backed up with those that came in from the plantations, Africa, or you call them African Americans today, that came into Freetown. They blended with their people that they've left over how many years during the enslavement. Okay, when so that's they met together, and at the end of the day, in 19th century, you see this unique group, the unique language coming up that you know today as Creole. So to say that if it was not for the African Nova Scotians, Sierra Leone would not have existed. That is what I have some issues with, and like you stated, it's debatable, which is very clear by the doctor, Dianas. I want to state, okay? The doctor said Dr. Davis said that that is even debatable. So that is why I came in with this also for
Hey,
people to
Francis.
understand.
Hey, Francis, my point of view is this, is that one of the best books that I can recommend to you was written by Dr. Lyman Senna. He's from the Gambia, and he wrote the book called Abolitionists Abroad, American Blacks in the Making of Modern West Africa. He clearly outlines that the Nova Scotians really play the primary role in establishing Freetown as we know it today.
No, that is no, it's not something that I'm arguing, like, you understand, it's not something like we're arguing about it. Okay, so the doctor that you're referencing, so just like you say, okay, if like today you see the different ethnic groups in Sierra Leone at the time gave birth to what you call the products of Creole, which is very clear in historic narrative, you understand, which is very clear in the historic narrative to say that. So it is also important that it is like a basis that scholar had stated historically that these were people that were very instrumental. You understand? The Nova Scotians that came in 1792 were instrumental in the construction of Freetown. But that doesn't state that they were the only, you understand? Because they worked with a lot of people. If you see, if you back up from 1792, you will notice that when the Maroons, which were the third group that came in 1800, and they used also Nova Scotia to come into Freetown. So you will notice that when the Nova Scotians came into Freetown,
He'll come back on. He'll come back on. Go ahead, Francis. Keep going. He'll come back on.
Yes.
Here he goes.
There was this fundamental principle of independence that Thomas and others, because Thomas Peters was like the leader of the Nova Scotians that came into Freetown, that founded Freetown in 1792. So some historians will tell you that Thomas Peters was the real founder of Freetown. Okay, because that will state that because he was the leader of the group that negotiated first in England and then came back to Nova Scotia before they left under John Clarkson. But when they came, they already had the principle that when you are coming to Freetown, you are going to be independent, and blacks are going to lead their own way and their own destiny. You understand? For that crew to come in 1792, and John Clarkson, who was the captain, became the first governor. So Thomas Peters angry with that. Okay, so you started having problems with the Nova Scotians and the colonial administration at the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you go closer to 1800, the colonial administration at the time, which was a rule that it was a company rule later that became the colony. So from that time that the Africans that came in as these guys that were running the colonial administration at the time came up with a quit rent. Okay, they came up with a quit rent. A quit rent was that the Nova
Go ahead, keep going.
Pay for
go ahead. He'll come back on. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
So the Nova Scotians,
I'm sorry about that, Dynasty. The weather here is kind of bad. We apologize.
We are very angry for the colonial administration to them a quit rent. You understand? So the Nova Scotians rebelled in 1800. So within that rebellion, that was the time that the colonial administrators rushed up to bring the Maroons. They rushed up to bring the Maroons because they knew the Maroons were so rife, we all know, from the mountains of Jamaica before they were exiled. After
hey, Francis.
Exiled.
Hey, Francis.
Yeah.
Hey, Francis.
Yeah.
Can I interject and say this? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I want to say that the history that you're outlining, yes, it's correct, and I think that the book that I mentioned by Dr. Lyman Senna, and Dr. Senna is from the Gambia, in his book Abolitionists Abroad, he basically talks about what you're speaking to now, but his concentration were on the people who came from Canada, came from America, and the role that they played in the making of what we now call Sierra Leone. And basically the story that he wants to tell, that it was really massive, and that group of people, their impact was not only in Sierra Leone, but it spread out to all of West Africa. That was the point that he was making when he said that. And so, I'm not minimizing what you're saying, but what I am saying is that, where you and I may disagree, I would probably say without the coming of those Nova Scotians to that part of West Africa, there would be no Freetown.
Yeah. But yes, like it's something that is clear in history. Just like you say, if you give birth to a child, there are a lot of things that you give.
Dinus, I'm going to try my phone.
Period, and if he adapt to that very well, that is key in his early development. Understand? So, Dr. Lemon, it's clear that not just only Nova Scotians, but a whole lot of people, even the recaptives. Okay, the recaptives, we have because of the 1792, the Nova Scotians came in. They were also very important in the establishment of Freetown. But what is
one second. Go ahead, Professor Davis. Go ahead.
Okay,
no, you can go ahead. Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead. Perfect. Go ahead, Fred. Go ahead, Francis.
Yes, I'm not arguing the fact that the Nova Scotians were not important or integral in the development of Freetown. Okay, I'm not saying that. Okay, but to say that if it was not for the Africans or the Nova Scotians that came in, there would not be a Sierra Leone. That I'll argue. You understand? That I will argue. That I'll argue because Sierra Leone had existed hundreds of years before the founding of Freetown or the naming of Freetown, even. Because this to me is just like a changing of nomenclature from Granville Town, Province of Freedom, and then Freetown. You understand?
Well,
I see it just like a change of name or
Francis,
a change of name. So
Francis, can you
they
hear
are
me?
important. They are very important. But I will not say, just like I will not say as a historian, a young historian coming up, that Pedro da Sintra founded Sierra Leone or discovered Sierra Leone. You understand? I will not say that. I will not say that Pedro da Sintra discovered Sierra Leone in 1462. With my level, with my historic education, you understand? I will not say that. It is something that we'll discuss and then we analyze for people to understand properly. So to say that if it was not for Africa, for the Nova Scotians that came, there will not be a Sierra Leone. This is what I have issues with, and that's what I want to debate on this particular stuff, Dianas, because I listen, you understand? And I listen when the professor or the doctor was saying it, and I knew, I said, okay, let me come in and then try to clarify this, because he might have positioned his thoughts mostly on the other doctors' thoughts on African Americans and African contribution on the west coast of Africa, you understand? Or the African diaspora on that side coming into Africa, and especially the west coast and especially Sierra Leone. You understand? So
yes,
that is why I have no problem with the issue of Nova Scotians being integral in the development of Freetown. You understand?
I'm waiting for Professor Davis. We have lost Professor Davis. I'm waiting for him to come back on. Guys, hit that like button. Here we go. All right, Professor Davis. Professor Davis.
Hey, Dynasty there?
Yeah, we're here.
Yes, can you hear me? Right, right.
Yeah, we hear you.
And
We hear
so,
you just fine.
and so Francis and I just have a fundamentally disagreement. I agree basically with what Dr. Lyman Senna has said. I think that those folks who came back were abolitionists and they played a significant role to development of what we now not only call Sierra Leone, but all of West Africa. Dr. Senna is a Yale University professor who's done extensive research on this topic. And so what I don't want to do is to minimize, the significance of these folks who came back from Canada and who came back from America and who really, and from my perspective, laid the foundation to what would become Sierra Leone. Now, am I suggesting that there weren't people already living there? That's not what I'm saying. That's like saying, well, when the Europeans came to the Americas, there weren't any Native Americans. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. What I am saying, Dinas, is that Freetown, as we know it today, was built on the backs of those people who came from America and who came from Canada. That's not debatable. Dinas, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you just fine. We hear you just fine.
And that's not debatable. It just cannot be debatable at all. It's that's just a fact that those folks who basically they the black population in Nova Scotia felt that they were mistreated. They negotiated with the British, and this is we're leaving Nova Scotia. They came to that part of West Africa. There was nothing that was there. There was no city called Freetown. It just did not exist. Those people built it from whole cloth. And that's just a fact. I mean, that's just not even a debate at all.
Thoughts on that, Brother Francis? Francis, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Who?
Yeah, can you hear? Did you hear Professor Davis's response?
All right.
I was saying, did you hear Professor Davis? Did you hear his response?
Yeah. Just like I've stated it, and I'll restate it again. I'm not debating the issue of. I'm not debating the contributions of the Nova Scotians in Freetown. You understand? Okay. I'm not debating that one. That the Nova Scotians did not contribute. Not just the Nova Scotians. You had up to 4 groups that are very integral in what you know as the development of Freetown today. 4 groups. Okay. 4 groups. So it is also important for our people to understand that the colonial construction at the time did not use Freetown as Sierra Leone. There was a distinction between what you know as Freetown and that of Sierra Leone. That was the key colonial construction. And that only changed in the 1890s, late 1896. That was when the colonial or the British sidestepped their policy of non-assimilation or non-annexation, and then went beyond what you know today as a colony. You understand? So there was, these were 2. So basically it was just like I would say, was it a geographical apartheid? Yeah, that would have been like a geographical apartheid that was on Sierra Leone at the time.
President, you there?
That what you know as Freetown was just the Freetown is what became the colony, and then people out of Freetown they were Sierra Leoneans, so they were not these people within Freetown at the time, Scotians and the other groups that came that were living in Freetown. We are not Sierra Leoneans as per colonial construction. They were not Sierra Leoneans.
Hey, Francis, listen, here's my question to you. Hey, Francis, can you hear me? Hey, Francis, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, here's my question to you, and this is what I want to know specifically from your perspective. What specifically were the contributions made by the Nova Scotians who migrated from Canada to what is now Sierra Leone? I'm not talking about the Jamaicans. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about the recaptives. I want to know from you, what were the specific contributions of the Nova Scotians to the making of what we now call Sierra Leone?
There were a lot. For instance, if we look at just the, like you say, the Christianization or the religious as you were saying before I came in, you made it very clear, and that is not what I'm trying to say. When I was listening to the show, one thing that made me came into the show, which was and especially to help others, okay, which I will understand it and other people will understand it, but for the wider public, to say that if it was not for the Nova Scotians that came in, there would not be a Sierra Leone. Okay, that's something we need to critically analyze. But just to say, there are a lot of visions of Nova Scotians, especially that group that came into Sierra Leone. So say, you were talking about the First Baptist Church and all of it. So you see the Christianization of Sierra Leone. What was Sierra Leone before these guys came into Freetown and then started developing? So if you in Freetown today, there are 3 1792 churches. Okay, and these were founded by that group of people. 3 1792 churches. You have one church I call the College Chapel. And first of all, let's understand, before they move into all of these Christian sects like Methodism and stuff, these guys were anti-dons. Okay, they had this anti-don connection. That was the Nova Scotians. We are those that brought this anti-don connection. So they had like 3 churches. I think Dinas, the last time you went to Sakila Road, you saw one of the churches, right?
Right.
2 churches. Fine. So that is one. That is the First Baptist Church. Okay. That is one. And there is one on Wilberforce Street, which is on the low. There is 2 Zions. We have one Zion on the hill and one Zion on the low, which is Wilberforce Street. So that is the 1792. And there is another one on Lightfoot Boston Street, known as the College Chapel. The College Chapel. So this is just to mention like one part of the contribution of that group of people that came in, and which that's what we are talking. I'm debating. I will state all of the contributions of all of these groups. They are very important in the foundation or the development of Freetown at the time. All of this group, and this it was those that came, the diaspora that came, that worked with brothers and sisters that were here. You remember you had the captives also working with them after the abolition of slavery. So people that were coming from the Congo, people who were coming as people coming from the Benin and stuff. So the Yoruba connection, every stuff, all of these guys, we are what gave birth to what you know as Creole today. Right. So their contributions, Professor Dr. Davis, it's very important. That I will state. I'm not moving away from that.
No, Francis, I think that's fine. But for me, I think that Dr. Senna, as I stated before, outlined much of what you're saying, but his focus really.
No, we lost him again. Well, man, what we'll do, because we keep losing Professor Davis, when he comes back on, here we go. Professor Davis, we keep losing you, so what we'll do, we'll go ahead and respond.
Sorry about that. Just the connection is just really bad tonight.
No problem. So what we'll do, go ahead and respond. Then we'll let Francis make some then we'll let Francis make closing closing remarks, and then we'll go ahead and let you close out after that. So.
Right. So my closing remarks is that, you know, in terms of the transnational history of Black Canadians is very connected to the African American experience. In regards to the Nova Scotians, in their legacy in Canada, I think it speaks for itself. I think that Dr. Lyman Senna, who was a renowned scholar at Yale University, he's from the Gambia. He speaks to the fact that when those Nova Scotians went to West Africa, they were abolitionists, and unfortunately, the slave trade was still in abundance in that part of Africa. And what they did was really help to change or to help end slavery in what we now call the area of the Ivory Coast, of what is now Sierra Leone and Liberia, and that's what they were. They were abolitionists abroad because they had understood the legacy of enslavement because they had been enslaved in America, and they went to help to transform an area which was still heavily involved in the West African slave trade.
So, Francis, you can go ahead and close out, and then we'll go ahead and let Professor Davis close out. Then we'll shut it down. But go ahead, Francis.
All right. What?
No, I'm saying you go ahead and close out. You make your final remarks, final statement, and we'll log off.
Yeah, and I'm very glad Professor Davis was great in his submission and stuff, and pinning most of his arguments to the other scholar from Gambia, which is very key and also very important. You if Professor Davis have a chance, you can also go read one of our foremost scholars in Sierra Leone, which is C. Magbelify, which he did a lot of work on nationalist history also on Sierra Leone, you understand? So putting not just history, but put it in a perspective of nationalism, you understand? Which is very key. But like I stated, and Dr. Davis said, these African diaspora, and like I will say to you always, diners, the Africa in this our age need the African diaspora to move in a union and push development, which is very key. And that's not something that is happening today. It's been happening for ages. It's just need to be moved on a different paradigm. In a different paradigm. Okay. So and that also has to do with the reconstruction and demystifying some of the historical narratives we've got over time. So that we all understand ourselves better. But the African diaspora has been so integral in the development of West Africa, not just Sierra Leone, and it is something that we all have to embrace, and we all have to work with to see that we move forward. And that also has to do with the humility. If our brothers and sisters are coming back home, the humble nature of our brothers and sisters is very important for us down here to work in unison and progress. Okay? Because remember, there had been a lot of conditions that had taken place over time. So, but I will end on this note. I resonate with the significance of the African diaspora. So when I say the African diaspora, I'm not just saying the Nova Scotians. You understand? I'm not just saying the Nova Scotians. I'm talking about the Black Poor that first came. You had the Maroons, and even those that were here that did not take the Middle Passage, which are the captives. They all worked in unison with their indigenous brothers and sisters to develop what we know today as Sierra Leone. So, but I'll always be firm to, yeah. I'll always be firm on
Hey,
that.
Dennis. Hey, Dennis, this is my
Which is
closing
good.
word here. You know what? Hey, Dennis, the gift that the Black diaspora has given to the African continent is the concept of a collective African identity. Prior to the transatlantic slave trade, there were no Africans. The concept of being an African person really comes from the Black diaspora. In addition to that, if you look at what we now call the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, when you look at the drafters of the OAU, they weren't from Africa. These folks were the descendants of the folks who were enslaved in the West, who had come back to Africa, who created a draft charter to unify the entire continent. That's exactly what those Nova Scotians were doing when they went back to Africa. They saw themselves collectively as an African people. So when we talk about African, that first concept of being an African person really is not coming from the African continent. It comes from the Black diaspora.
All right, everyone. We can always do a part two. We can always do a part two. Brother Francis, brother Professor Davis said he's coming to Sierra Leone. I don't know when, but he said he's coming. Professor Davis, when you come to Sierra Leone?
I'm definitely coming. Listen, of course I'm going to come. Those Nova Scotians created Freetown. Of course I'm coming.
Here we go. Collaboration, Professor Davis. Collaboration.
They
Collaboration.
were collaborating. And that was collaboration. And that's exactly what they
Yeah,
did. They
yeah.
collaborated and created.
That's very key. It was not a sole creation.
Francis, you know what I'm talking about, man. Listen, it was definitely a collaboration. But what I'm saying is, I don't want people to not, to kind of miss this history, because honestly, it's written and it happened. And think about this, Francis. You have to keep in mind, people were enslaved in the West, and they came back and did something that hadn't been done before. It just hadn't been done. Folks, 5,000-6,000 miles across the ocean decided to come back and create something new. And as I told Dinus before, if you look at what became the OAU, the folks who actually wrote that draft charter to the OAU, last name Eastman, right? Bright. These are all the descendants of the folks who came back. So my point being is that the Black diaspora has given Africa a whole lot, and is still giving Africa a whole lot. It just can't be denied.
Yes, sir. So everyone, thank you so much for joining. When Professor Davis comes to Sierra Leone, me, him, and Francis will all sit down with some crane and cassava, and we'll eat and we'll discuss history. So everyone, thank you so much. In fact, you know what I do too? You know what I do? I'll connect you, Francis, Professor Davis. I'll connect you guys offline on WhatsApp.
Absolutely.
I'll connect you too. I'll connect you too. You both are great resources. Great resources. I think it'd be great for you guys to connect and collab. There we go. No, seriously. I'm gonna connect both of you guys. Absolutely. So everyone, thank you for joining. Join me, like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynasty Mirror Search for Hulu. Peace.
Great meeting you.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bro.